Just by Canada shutting off its steel and aluminum valves, iPhone prices could skyrocket, and you wouldn't be able to buy a single Tesla car. It may sound distant, but it's all getting very close. You don't need to work in an affected industry. If you use a phone drive, a car book tickets to visit your loved ones, then a metal crisis at the northern border could upend your entire life. In today's video, we'll explore top 5 US brands that will collapse if Canada cuts off steel and aluminum. Names that once seemed unshakable, from Coca-Cola to Apple Tesla, are standing on the edge all because of a few clean coils of metal that couldn't make it across the border. Watch now, because the last one to pay the price could be you. And note that this information is compiled from statistical data and is not intended to defame any organization or individual. Number 1. Coca-Cola. Are you surprised that it's not some heavy industry giant, but Coca-Cola, the long-standing American beverage icon, that tops the list of brands at risk of collapse if Canada halts steel and aluminum exports? You might not notice, but Coca-Cola consumes an average of around 17 billion aluminum cans per year in the US market. And according to the Aluminum Association, nearly 70% of aluminum used in the US beverage industry comes from Canada, a neighbor and a high-quality, reliable supply workshop for decades. What's crucial here is that the type of aluminum Coca needs isn't just any kind. It must be thin-rolled, food-grade, pure aluminum, flexible, durable, and safe for containing acidic substances like soda. Canada, with its smelting facilities in Quebec and Ontario, is the most suitable supplier. When that supply chain is squeezed, the entire ecosystem surrounding a Coca can begins to wobble. A recent move to raise import taxes on aluminum from Canada by 50% is part of the Revive Domestic Manufacturing campaign. But for companies like Coca-Cola, the consequences are nearly immediate. Spot aluminum prices in the US rose from $2,400 per ton to over $3,300 in just 4 weeks, according to Trading Economics. The shortage of stable-priced supply forces Coca to seek farther replacements from Asia or the Middle East, which are more expensive, less stable, and slower in delivery. The result, the cost of each can increase by about 12-15 cents, according to the Can Manufacturers Institute. A figure that seems small, but for supermarket chains, dealers, and especially American consumers used to buying Coca in packs of 12 or 24, it's a clear shock. At a Walmart in Missouri, the price of a 12-can Coca pack rose from $5.49 to $7.99 just in May 2025, according to Consumer Reports. Elderly customers, workers, or middle-class families who used to consider Coca a daily habit, even part of their meals, now have to think twice before picking up a can. Worse, to cut costs, Coca-Cola is experimenting with switching from aluminum packaging to PET plastic bottles. This is not just a change in materials, but a slippery slope in brand identity. For millions of Americans, a Coca can is something purely American, red-colored, the pop of the can, opening the cold touch of shiny aluminum, an experience plastic can't replace. The U.S. Consumer Psychology Institute warns that changing packaging could cause Coca to lose 18 to 20% of its loyal customer base, primarily baby boomers and Gen X, those who've been attached to Coca cans since the 1960s. On the other hand, switching to plastic bottles also sparks a crisis from young consumers, those who prioritize sustainability. While Coca has pledged to be carbon neutral and recycle 100% of packaging by 2030, increased PET bottle usage has drawn fierce criticism from environmental organizations. According to Green America, a plastic bottle takes an average of 450 years to decompose, while an aluminum can be recycled and back on shelves within 60 days. Thus, Coca faces not just a pricing crisis, but a blow to the eco-friendly image they've spent billions to build. But the damage isn't limited to branding. Coca's plants in Durham, North Carolina, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and St. Louis, Missouri, are currently reducing output rotating shifts or pausing recruitment, according to Beverage Digest. A can production line can't run without aluminum, and that means hundreds of workers without hours. Many small-scale distributors are also affected as orders drop and profits shrink. What's remarkable is how few Americans know that one of the reasons Coca cans aren't rolling off the lines lies just 200 miles away across the northern border. For many, this isn't a trade issue, it's a slap in the face to the illusion of industrial independence in America. We've been used to thinking Coca-Cola is 100% American, but it turns out that thin layer comes from a country whose current policies are pushing it away. When middle-aged shoppers walk into a store and see Coca getting more expensive or switching to plastic, they don't realize they're feeling the impact of a larger battle. But the consequences are real: price volatility, disrupted consumer habits, threatened jobs. People who once considered Coca a part of a stable life are now starting to see that stability crumble. One Coca can doesn't cause anyone to lose their job immediately. But when millions of cans can't be made, when lines are halted, when trust in sustainability and familiarity is shaken, a once irreplaceable brand may start to slip. And if Canada really tightens its aluminum supply, as warned with tariffs rising another 25-30% in Q3, then it's not just Coca cans disappearing, but a cultural trust being fractured. A brand doesn't die from competition, but from losing what defines its identity. For Coca-Cola, that's the aluminum can. And for America, the lesson is this dependency is never a problem until someone unplugs the cord. Number 2. Tesla, an electric car company leading in technology worth hundreds of billions. It sounds immune to raw material shortages, right? But if you think Tesla will be the last name trembling in the aluminum and steel crisis between the US and Canada, then you've probably forgotten one important thing. Tesla isn't built from silicon or software. It's forged from aluminum. And not just any aluminum, only types that are light pure and precise enough to build a Tesla frame. Most of it comes from Canada. Tesla may be a machine of the future, but its shell is still metal, and nothing shapes the Model Y or Cybertruck better than aluminum sheets pressed in Quebec. According to the Reuters Automotive Supply Chain report, over 60% of the aluminum used in Tesla frames at Fremont. And Austin comes from Canadian partners like Rio Tinto and Alcoa. Without them, the signature vertical doors, geometric hoods, or gleaming body panels turn into financial burdens, or must be replaced by heavier, less efficient metals. Unlike traditional car makers that use steel frames, Tesla chooses aluminum not to save money but to survive. Lighter means battery savings, longer range per charge, a life or death factor in the EV race. The Model S has up to 48% of its structure made of aluminum. If it's missing, the car gets heavier, range drops, performance declines. A $52,000 Tesla that could go 320 miles now only manages 280 American consumers will start reconsidering Tesla versus cheaper Chinese EVs. That don't depend on a northern border, and then it's no longer hypothetical. When aluminum import taxes from Canada rose to 50%, prices spiked from $2,400 to over $3,300 per ton per trading economics. Tesla's Austin line was immediately affected, cutting output by 18% in May, according to Bloomberg. Premium versions like Model Y Long Range and Model S Plaid saw deliveries pushed back to early 2026. Car prices rose $2,000 to $3,500. Programs that encourage trading gas cars for EVs, especially popular in California, Nevada, and Arizona, were also paused. For many middle-class Americans, Tesla isn't a luxury icon, but a long-term savings choice. EVs save on gas, need less repair, and are eco-friendly. But now that car is no longer an achievable dream, prices are up by thousands, wait times are longer, incentives disappear. Consumers are turning back to their old Ford Escapes, easier to buy, no app needed to charge. They're not just losing faith in a product, but in the promise that technology will free America from energy dependence. The storm isn't just from materials. On June 5th, a silent but clear political rift emerged. Tesla's once strongest political backers began drifting away. Some analysts call it a political divorce, and Tesla, already reeling from aluminum shortages, now finds its domestic support shaken. The consequences were almost immediate. In just one day, Tesla stock fell 14%, wiping over $15 billion off its market value. Green investment funds, once hopeful that Tesla would lead the energy transition, began doubting if the company was politically stable enough to invest in. When a tech giant is squeezed by both material sources and policy shifts, growth is no longer a numbers game. It becomes a matter of survival. By June 11th, even Tesla's CEO took to social media to express regret, but the damage couldn't be undone. And we feel it more than anyone. A Tesla Model 3 long range now costs nearly $3,000 more, with the average US household savings that's 6-7 months just to cover the down payment. New cars or scarce used car prices jumped 12% in June per the Edmunds Used Car Index. In states like Colorado or Oregon, delivery wait times stretch to 3 months. Many people are turning to hybrids or older gas models, cheaper and readily available. Workers are under pressure too. In Fremont, some production units have been cut to 4 days per week. According to Business Insider, many technicians, especially older ones relying on hourly wages, are facing income loss. No one is firing them, but when materials don't arrive and machines don't run, work shifts become a luxury. A one-day extra break each week is no longer a joy, it's a sign that something is off. Meanwhile, the global market doesn't wait. For every step, Tesla slows China's BYD and Germany's Volkswagen speed up. Their EVs are flooding into Latin America and Europe, where consumers see no reason to wait. Tesla was the leader, but a few quarters of delay could make them the follower in a race with no finish line. A striking image, Tesla once looked like the Cybertruck racing through the desert. No one thought it could be stopped. But a vehicle, no matter how advanced, can't move if a single bolt in its axle breaks. In this case, that bolt is the aluminum still stuck in Quebec. It's the tightened tariffs. It's the handshake that's no longer firm. No need for a full trade war. A few turns in the right place can derail the whole machine. For Americans, this is no longer just a story between Musk and the market. It's a real question if even Tesla, the symbol of innovation, can be crippled by material shortages and lost support, then what can still be called made in America without trembling. While people still debate whether to install charging stations or keep their old gas car, the question is no longer how good the tech is, but whether the assembly line can still run and whether anyone still wants to back it. Tesla isn't dead. But if one day you see the message delivery delayed due to material shortage, remember the future doesn't collapse because of bullets, but because of a tariff, a stream of aluminum, and a handshake that was pulled back. Number 3. Apple. In September, you might no longer find the iPhone 17 as easily as in previous years. It's not because you lack money, but because the iPhone will be scarcer, more expensive, and may even lose the purity that defines it. Aluminum, the metal that makes the iPhone's ultralight glossy shell, is becoming a critical weakness in the supply chain. And when Canada, Apple's main source of clean aluminum, is hit by new tariffs and trade policies, that familiar phone in the pockets of Americans becomes less certain. An iPhone isn't made just of silicon or software. It's a physical object. It has a unibody aluminum shell, precision-engineered stainless steel frame, and glass covering electrical components within. According to an S&P Global Supply Chain report, Apple uses over 300,000 tons of aluminum annually for iPhone, iPad, MacBook, and Apple Watch, more than half sourced from Quebec plants, like Rio Tinto and Alcoa. This is green aluminum refined with hydroelectric power, low-emission, ESG compliant, forming the backbone of Apple's sustainable brand image. But in early 2025, everything started shifting. Shipments are being held up, inspections, tightened costs, spiking lead times, stretching. Apple could pivot aluminum suppliers to China, the Middle East, even India, but those sources aren't as clean, pure, or timely. Electronics-grade supply switches don't happen overnight. That means higher costs, delayed production schedules, and standards slipping. Counterpoint Research estimates that if Apple must switch to high-emission aluminum, each iPhone's casing cost could rise by US $35–70. That would push the retail price of the iPhone 17 up at least $100 before counting delayed stock or limited availability at launch. For middle-class American users who've grown accustomed to trade-in upgrades at good prices, this is a real shock. An iPhone isn't just a phone. It's a camera, wallet, work tool, learning device, and a symbol of global connection. The blow isn't only from the north. Domestically, Apple is also under pressure. While seen as a national brand, most of its products are assembled in China and India. Many politicians call it the great paradox of modern America, having premium American products manufactured almost entirely overseas. In early 2025, Congress floated a proposal for higher tariffs if companies don't meet a minimum domestic production ratio. That puts Apple in a vice, externally missing clean materials, internally being forced to relocate production back home, something it's not ready for. Some experts call this a silent conflict between image and reality, a brand praised for sustainability and innovation, but unable to control its supply or align fully with Made in America mandates. Consumers may not see these shifts head-on, but they feel them new iPhones arrive. Late colors or fewer casings, slightly thicker, and promotions rarer. Though Apple hasn't officially confirmed it, the upgrade cycle among US users has slowed from an average of 2 years to 3.5 years per Pew Research. Many now view phone upgrades not as joy, but burden. Apple once led through beautiful design-stable experience and trust in quality. But in a globally unstable supply chain era, even giants aren't immune to external shocks. An iPhone missing its Canadian aluminum isn't a technical glitch, it's a symbol of the quiet fracture in America's tech self-reliance. And if the iPhone, the most common familiar device, is being hit this way, imagine how fragile the more complex systems are. Number 4. General Motors. There was a time when the auto industry was seen as the symbol of American strength. Paved roads, towns that grew around assembly plants, middle-class families rising through stable jobs at GM, Ford, Chrysler, all of it shaped a classic American dream. Not on Wall Street, not in Silicon Valley, but right in the industrial heart of the Midwest. General Motors, with models like the Silverado Suburban and Malibu, was once the heart of that dream, but now that heart is beating more slowly. And paradoxically, part of the reason comes from the simplest things, steel and aluminum. Materials once so familiar that no one paid them any mind have now become a critical choke point, as supply from Canada, a longtime partner, has been blocked by new tariff policies. Since May 2025, when the two formerly close neighbors clashed over steel and aluminum, GM's entire supply chain has begun to falter. According to Automotive Supply Chain Insights, over 50% of the sheet steel used in GM vehicles in the US is imported from Ontario, and up to 60% of the high-grade aluminum used in SUVs and pickups comes from Quebec. This isn't an easily replaceable source because high material quality, low transport cost, and reliable delivery are only possible through the cross-border relationship between the two countries. Without that supply, not a single GM plant is left unaffected. The shock spread quickly. GM's plant in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where its core pickup models are built, reduced output by 12% in May alone, according to Automotive News. The Flint plant in Michigan, once an industrial icon, also reported material shortages that forced many lines to operate intermittently. Small cities like Janesville, Wisconsin, and Wentzville, Missouri, once reliant on GM, are now facing age-old fears. Job loss, reduced benefits, and a loss of stability. To the public, this is no longer a macroeconomic story. It's less meat on the dinner table, a car loan put on hold, a health insurance plan being cut. A technician in Flint told a local newspaper, "We're not afraid of hard work. We're afraid the line will stop. When the steel doesn't come, we don't even know what we're supposed to do." GM hasn't publicly disclosed the full extent of the damage, but according to Cox Automotive estimates, if the shortage of Canadian materials extends into Q3, GM could suffer losses between $2.4 and $3.1 billion due to reduced output and the higher cost of alternative imports. And it's not just about money, the company also loses supply chain reliability, bringing pressure from dealers, shareholders, and consumers who are running out of patience. Unlike tech companies that can pivot with software, GM survives on physical production lines. No steel, no cars. And when an SUV can't leave the factory, it means hundreds of workers lose shifts, dozens of auto shops lose customers, and entire towns lose tax revenue. In the era of electric vehicles, GM had made bold bets on electrification projects. But now those very EV models, which require even more aluminum, are becoming burdens. The GMC Hummer EV and Chevy Silverado EV, once touted as trump cards against Tesla, now face indefinite production delays due to a shortage of structural materials. The battery plant in Tennessee is temporarily adjusting investment timelines, according to a regional executive. And if GM cannot deliver on time, its reputation in the EV space will continue to decline, not only domestically, but also in Europe and Latin America. Worse still, GM is no longer a company with bargaining power. In the face of political instability, it has chosen to remain silent. Unlike Tesla with its charismatic CEO and tech-backed narrative, GM only has quiet workers and a financial report. That leaves the company unable to lobby policy without priority in EV subsidy allocations and slowly being edged out of the bigger game. GM's story is not just about one struggling company. It's a mirror reflecting the towns that once believed hard work at the factory would lead to a fulfilling life. But now they see their future dictated by a tax code from Washington or a customs checkpoint at the border. And the saddest part is, there's nothing they can do to change it. If the current situation persists, according to the Brookings Institution, at least 7 industrial states, including Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Missouri, Kentucky, Wisconsin, and Tennessee, will see 35,000 auto industry workers affected. That's not just a number, that's thousands of families losing income, children losing healthcare, and local communities facing uncertainty. Not every American drinks Coca-Cola. Not everyone dreams of buying a Tesla. But most people know someone who worked for GM or lived off the company. When this company starts to falter because of a single tariff line and a few sheets of metal stuck in customs, America is forced to ask itself what in its domestic manufacturing is truly sustainable. And if a symbol like GM, which once carried America to industrial greatness, can't even maintain production just because it lacks aluminum and steel, then brands that rely entirely on imported materials like Boeing, for instance, might want to start worrying now. Number 5, Boeing. If the iPhone in your pocket can be affected just because a roll of aluminum hasn't left Quebec, if a GM pickup truck can be delayed due to a lack of a few sheets of rolled steel from Ontario, then imagine what could happen to a civilian aircraft over 60 meters long or a fleet of military jets worth tens of billions of dollars if the metal supply chain from Canada is severed. On the list of brands that could collapse if the northern border tightens, Boeing is not merely an aircraft manufacturer. It is a symbol of America in the skies, a pillar of commercial aviation, national defense, and global stature. And if the supply of high-grade metals from Canada is blocked, the impact won't stop. As shareholders, it will ripple to every passenger, every family, every flight you once took for granted. Boeing makes things you don't directly own, but depend on every day: the plane you take to visit your children, the business trip your entire project hinges on, or the aerial patrol keeping America's skies safe. And to build those things, Boeing needs hundreds of thousands of tons of material: ultralight aluminum for fuselages, high-grade alloy steel for frames, titanium for heat-resistant structures. According to Aerospace Materials 2024, nearly 30% of the metals used in the construction of commercial aircraft fuselages and over 40% of the materials used in Boeing's military aircraft components originate from Canada. Recently, as trade regulations and import tariffs have changed, you've likely seen this in the news over the past few weeks. A large portion of raw materials from Quebec and Ontario has no longer arrived regularly at Boeing's factories. As a result, recovery plans for the production lines of the 737 and 787 have been delayed. Some orders are behind schedule, while the booking calendar for the travel season is hitting peak demand. According to the Wall Street Journal, at least 68 commercial aircraft deliveries have already been delayed this quarter, and the main reason is a shortage of specialized alloys used in fuselages and structural bolts. Domestic airlines like Delta, United, and American are starting to postpone their fleet expansion plans. This means the flight you were planning to book for a holiday family visit could be more expensive, more crowded, or delayed. But it doesn't stop at commercial flights. Boeing is also the main contractor for a host of strategic defense programs, from the KC-46 refueling aircraft and P-8 Poseidon reconnaissance planes to the T-7A Red Hawk training fleet for the Air Force. All of them use extremely stringent materials that can't just be sourced casually on the global market. Without a stable supply from Canada, those aircraft can't be delivered on time, which means military units must alter their training patrol and deployment plans. You may not feel it immediately, but those in the industry know a pilot training program delayed by 6 months sets back an entire generation of strategic capability. You might never have thought a few sheets of aluminum could slow down America, but in truth, if one batch of clean certified aluminum from the north doesn't arrive, the whole assembly line has to halt. And more bitter still, while Boeing is scrambling to maintain production rhythm, Airbus, its European rival, is accelerating. International airlines that had signed with Boeing are now quietly renegotiating as delayed orders mean missed opportunities for launching new routes. According to Flight Global, if Boeing loses just 10% more commercial orders from now to 2027, it could miss out on over $9 billion in revenue and more gravely lose confidence in its leadership status. The fallout is already trickling down quietly. In Seattle and Wichita, dozens of component suppliers for Boeing have started cutting work hours, not because of a lack of orders, but because there aren't enough materials to manufacture. The American industrial dream, where aerospace engineers once belonged to the most esteemed class, is now teetering simply because a supply line has been choked. To you, these changes may not be as obvious as a job loss or rising supermarket prices, but they show up in flight reschedules, disrupted family plans, and ticket prices increasing for no apparent reason. And in a society that grows more mobile by the day, losing the ability to fly on time and at a fair price means losing part of the rhythm of modern life. To America, Boeing isn't just a business, it's part of the national identity of strength and credibility. When a plane can't leave the hangar on schedule, it's not just engineers who lose work, it's the promise that America is always ready that gets eroded. From the expensive iPhone in your pocket to the pickup truck still sitting on the factory floor, and now to the plane you're waiting to board to visit loved ones. Everything points to a simple truth: if the metal doesn't arrive in time, America can't run properly. And if just one border tightens, an entire nation could be forced to stand still. You don't need to read an economics report to feel the change. Just look at your rising bills, longer delivery times, postponed plans, or worse, lost jobs. When aluminum and steel are no longer just technical matters, but the very things that determine whether you can upgrade your phone, buy a new car, or catch your end-of-year flight, then everyone is involved. What do you think about the future of America's supply chain if Canada truly shuts down its metal exports? Share your thoughts, because it's not the experts, but everyday people who live with the longest-lasting consequences. Please note that all content is presented with the intent to explore, analyze, and spark discussion based on current events, emotions, and social trends. We respect the U.S. Constitution and all federal regulations.